The evening I discovered my marriage had been built on lies did not arrive with shouting or broken glass, but with a calm that felt more terrifying than any storm I had ever faced. I stepped through the front door of my suburban home in Franklin, Tennessee, expecting another ordinary Friday, only to find my wife Madison Harper sitting comfortably on the living room sofa beside my lifelong friend Logan Brooks, their careless smiles disappearing the instant they realized I had come home hours earlier than expected. For several endless seconds nobody spoke, and the silence became heavier than the walls surrounding us until Madison finally sighed as though she had grown tired of pretending and quietly admitted they had been seeing each other behind my back for months. Logan folded his arms with an arrogant grin and casually said, "You were always too busy chasing promotions to notice what was happening in your own house," while Madison simply nodded and added, "Maybe this is exactly what you deserved." Their words should have shattered me, yet something stranger happened because every emotion inside me seemed to disappear, leaving behind only a cold emptiness that made everything around me feel distant and unreal. Instead of arguing or demanding explanations, I looked around at the photographs, furniture, and memories we had spent years collecting together, realizing none of them truly belonged to the life I believed I was living anymore. Without saying another word, I quietly walked upstairs, opened the bedroom closet, and packed a single travel bag with enough clothes and personal documents to start over somewhere else, ignoring the muffled sound of their laughter drifting through the hallway below. When I returned downstairs carrying that lonely bag, neither of them tried to stop me because they were already acting as though I had become nothing more than a forgotten chapter they were eager to leave behind. I placed my wedding ring on the hallway table beside the house keys, opened the front door, and stepped into the cool evening air without looking back even once, because I understood that nothing I could possibly say would restore respect that had already been destroyed. As my truck rolled away from the neighborhood where I had imagined growing old, I silently promised myself that I would never return seeking revenge, apologies, or answers from people who had willingly thrown away my trust. Hours later, the bright city lights had disappeared behind me, and I found myself checking into an inexpensive roadside motel outside Lexington, Kentucky, where the quiet room forced me to confront the painful truth that I was completely alone for the first time in over a decade. Sleep barely visited me that night because every memory replayed inside my mind. But sometime before sunrise I realized that losing dishonest people was not the same as losing my future. The following morning I accepted a short-term project management contract in Denver, Colorado, believing that physical distance would give me the opportunity to rebuild a life untouched by betrayal and constant reminders of my past. As I drove west across endless highways beneath clear American skies, I had no idea that walking away with one small bag would become the first decision leading me toward a future far greater than the one I had just left behind. I woke before sunrise on my first morning in Denver, rented a modest apartment overlooking a quiet street, and promised myself that every decision I made from that day forward would be based on self-respect instead of fear of being alone. The silence inside those unfamiliar walls felt uncomfortable at first, but it slowly became a reminder that peace was far more valuable than living in a home filled with deception. My new job demanded long hours managing large commercial construction projects, and I buried myself in every assignment because focusing on meaningful work was easier than replaying memories that no longer deserved space in my mind. My coworkers knew nothing about the broken marriage I had left behind, so they judged me only by my character, my work ethic, and the reliability I brought to every project. Outside the office, I rebuilt the routines I had abandoned years earlier by joining a local fitness center, hiking the nearby mountain trails on weekends, and reading books that challenged me to grow into someone stronger than the man who had walked away with a single bag. Week after week I noticed small changes within myself, because I no longer woke up wondering why someone had betrayed me and instead began asking how much better my future could become. Nearly 7 months after arriving in Colorado, my company promoted me to senior project director after I successfully completed a challenging development ahead of schedule and under budget, earning the respect of executives who valued dedication more than empty promises. Standing inside my new office, overlooking the Denver skyline, I realized that losing the people who underestimated me had quietly opened the door to opportunities I might never have pursued otherwise. Not long afterward, I attended a charity fundraising gala hosted by several local business leaders, expecting nothing more than polite conversations and professional networking before returning home early. Instead, I met Rachel Morgan, an architect, whose confidence was matched only by her kindness. and our first conversation lasted so long that the event staff began stacking chairs around us before either of us noticed the room had nearly emptied. Rachel never asked painful questions about my past or pressured me to explain the scars I carried because she believed people should be known for the lives they were creating rather than the mistakes others had made against them. As our friendship gradually deepened into something neither of us tried to force, I found myself smiling naturally again, realizing genuine happiness often arrives quietly after you stop chasing it. Just 11 months after I had walked away from my old life, my phone lit up late one rainy evening with an unfamiliar number, and something inside me warned that the past had finally decided to come looking for me. I answered after several rings, and the trembling voice on the other end whispered, "Ryan, it's Madison, and I know I have no right to call, but I need to tell you something that you deserve to hear." Madison struggled to find the right words as long pauses filled the conversation, and when she finally spoke, she admitted that Logan had abandoned her only a few months after I disappeared because the excitement they had mistaken for love quickly collapsed under the weight of mistrust and constant arguments. She confessed that every promise they had made to each other had turned into accusations, and she quietly admitted that the life she believed would make her happy had become lonelier than the one she had carelessly thrown away. I listened without interrupting because there was nothing left for me to prove, and the anger that once felt impossible to control had long since been replaced by a calm confidence built through months of rebuilding myself. When she apologized for treating me as though I had never mattered, I simply thanked her for finally telling the truth, explaining that honesty had arrived far too late to change anything between us. Madison asked if we could meet one last time to talk face to face, insisting that she needed closure before she could move forward with her own life after everything that had happened. I stared through my apartment window at the rain falling over downtown Denver, before quietly replying, "Sometimes closure isn't found in another conversation, but in accepting the consequences of the choices we make." She began crying softly, saying she wished she could erase the day she destroyed our marriage because she now understood that loyalty and trust were worth far more than temporary excitement. I sincerely hoped she would find peace someday, but I also knew that reopening old wounds would only damage the new life I had fought so hard to build. After ending the call, I placed my phone on the kitchen counter and stood in complete silence, realizing I felt neither satisfaction nor revenge because genuine healing leaves very little room for bitterness. The person who had once depended on someone else's approval to feel valuable no longer existed, replaced by someone who understood that self-respect begins the moment you refuse to accept less than you deserve. Rachel arrived at my apartment later that evening carrying takeout from our favorite restaurant. Immediately noticing the thoughtful expression on my face before asking if everything was all right, I smiled honestly and told her that an unexpected chapter from my past had finally closed for good, and instead of asking unnecessary questions, she simply reached for my hand and reminded me that the future deserved more attention than yesterday ever could. Several weeks later, my company selected me to lead its largest commercial development project in company history, trusting me with responsibilities that once would have seemed impossible when my confidence had been shattered. As I stood on the construction site watching the first foundation being poured, I realized the strongest buildings and the strongest people both require solid foundations before they can withstand life's fiercest storms. Rachel and I continued building our relationship with patience, mutual respect, and honest communication, never rushing milestones simply because the world expected us to follow a timeline. Every shared meal, every weekend road trip, and every conversation reminded me that healthy love feels peaceful instead of exhausting, and that lesson alone was worth every painful step that had brought me there. One crisp autumn afternoon, we hiked to a scenic overlook in the Rocky Mountains, where endless peaks stretched across the horizon beneath a bright blue sky, and I quietly reflected on the incredible distance between the broken man who had left Tennessee carrying one small bag and the confident man standing there now. I finally understood that the greatest victories are often invisible because they happen inside a person's heart long before anyone else notices the change. Looking back, I realized Madison and Logan had never truly stolen my future because all they had really taken was a version of my life that had already been built on false trust and empty promises. Their betrayal forced me to rediscover my own strength, rebuild my confidence, and create a future that reflected my values instead of my fears. If this story leaves you thinking about the importance of self-respect, remember that walking away from betrayal is never a sign of weakness because choosing peace over constant pain is one of the bravest decisions a person can make. Life has an incredible way of rewarding those who refuse to let someone else's Betrayal defined the rest of their journey, even when the road toward healing feels impossibly difficult at first. Please subscribe to our channel and share this video with your friends and family. We create entertaining and inspiring stories for our viewers, and your support helps us continue making great content for you.